Thurgood Brooks, for coming on the Rock Island Line podcast. It's so good to see you.
It's amazing to be here. I'm so glad that you reached out to me to be on.
Yeah, and you are actually the first guest in the studio. So everyone else I've interviewed so far, I've had to take my show on the road, and we finished the painting, the carpet's down. I'm still waiting on a couch and some backdrops, but you are officially the first in-studio guest.
You didn't tell me that. You feel like you saved that for now. I appreciate that. It makes me feel very, very special.
Yeah.
It's going to be amazing here. It looks nice already.
Yeah. Well, it's so fun to have you here. And, everyone who comes in, we've just kind of been starting with, your Rock Island story. So tell me about your connection to Rock Island.
Oh, well, for me, I'm born and raised Rock Island. Literally, and that was when they had the hospital where the birth center was still in Rock Island. So I can say that. But my parents, my grandparents, at least on my dad's side, my grandmother, she's originally from Danville, Illinois, and so I have a lot of family down in the Danville area, the Danville Champaign area, and so she moved up here mid '60s with my grandpa, and that's when my family on my dad's side settled in here. As for my mom's parents, my grandpa, he grew up in Cairo, Illinois, down south, southern Illinois, excuse me. I'm not sure when he came up here exactly, but I know my grandma, actually, my mom's mom, she's originally from Alabama, and she was a sharecropper as a kid. Yeah, my grandma, literally, as a kid, was a sharecropper, and reason why she came up here is because, they were running. I believe it was her father was being threatened because they own property, or you know how that goes, owned property. They were in debt for property, working their field and getting more in debt.
So that system worked by saying, here's some land for you, but I own the land, but I'm sharing it with you, and you can earn that land over time by working fields.
Working the fields, and at the end of the year, whatever you have worked or you can show for, allegedly it should be able to pay the debt, but more times than not, it wasn't enough for whatever reason, and the debt was, passed on to the next year, and with interest usually, and other things. And so that's how that system worked. Sharecropping, and so I don't know the exact encounter that happened, but I do know that to keep his daughter safe, she was sent up here as a young girl to live with her uncle. So that'd be my great uncle, I believe, right? And wife, and actually, he's the founder of Olivet Baptist Church, my uncle A.B. Collins.
Okay.
And so that's how my family got here.
Yeah.
Both my mom and my dad. So they also were my dad actually was born in Danville as well, but my mom was born here in Rock Island.
And I'm guessing your family has no claim to that land now.
No.
That didn't work out as being something that built wealth or ended up in any property ownership, or?
No, not at all. My mom told me a while ago, not so long ago, that during a family reunion when I was a child, they went back to see that land, but it's not in our possession any sort, anything, or didn't seem to be much of anything then either.
Yeah.
So
generations kind of converging on Rock Island in the 60s, around that time, more at the height of Rock Island's factories, and more when we were in like a boom. Both sides of your family kind of came to this spot, and was that for work, for family relationships? Like, did you know people here? Did they come for opportunity?
Yeah, it was opportunity. So know at least, well, like that was my grandma's story. My mom's mom. My grandpa's, I know it was for opportunity and work, predominantly. I know my mom's dad, excuse me, would told us that he literally was sitting on the stoop one day and people came by saying he looking for work, and that's how he got on John Deere.
Wow.
He the same day, they got on, and so my grandpa retired from John Deere, both of them, and excuse me, you're right. It was that time period where jobs were booming. There's need for people to work with their hands and be able to walk into a job in real time, show that you're ready to work and willing to learn, do the job, and people were able to make good for their families. And so that's a lot of the reason. And also both of my grandparents were in the Army as well. My grandfather. So the arsenal being here also something that they are aware of as well. And so in addition to having all those factory plants and then that Army connection, so there wasn't an exact, we didn't have family here, there weren't any friends of any sort. It was strictly an opportunity, and then built a home, built a family, to where now like my dad, we started generations of Brookses at the Rock Island, right? So my dad was he graduated in 78 or 79. He played football in 78 here. At the time was all-time leading rusher at the high school. Had all-time single game rushing yards in the game. I believe touchdowns as well. He ended up playing at University of Illinois on a full ride scholarship. And then I had uncles that played on Elite 8 teams, Final Four teams in basketball. Also played football, so they played on the Duncan Reed teams. Few of my uncles. And then my brother, older brother Tony, he was a three-time varsity starter of football as well. 2-time All-State, I think. I had some success at the high school as well, and now I coach it now as well. I coach my nephew, I coach my brother, so I'm entering my 10th year, and so that's just my dad's side as far as, and that's only athletically. So, and then my mom, and like I said, at least for my grandmother, at least my mom's side, as I mentioned, her uncle started Alabama Baptist Church, right? So it kind of speaks to some of the interests in my family, and how I grew up as far as being community oriented. Sports played a huge role, but also I grew up in church. So a lot of those things shaped who I am and who I have become.
Yeah. I remember when I met you, you told me the story about listening to records of political speeches when you were like a little boy.
Uncle AJ told you that story.
Oh,
okay. I had to confirm it. Yes.
So yes. What is that story?
Yeah, I had a unique interest as a kid. And I don't know if it's because when I found out my name was who I was named after, being Thurgood Marshall, that I just figured I had to learn more about him and what he did, things of that sort. But my mom, we would go to Salvation Army on Saturdays or other places, thrift shopping. And I always wanted books. Like wherever we went, I read them. Like I for some reason I just love getting books. And so one time we were somewhere and there was this collection of like audio speeches, of like great speeches. I was like, I want this. And I listened to it. And so I've always had a love for words. And I love what and how they can get people to understand, move, believe, right? And and it's also from my grandmother as well, my mom's mom. I'm gonna tie this in for Yannicka, because now you got me thinking about it. So my mom, my grandma Jones. I'm gonna stop saying my mom. My grandma Jones is my mom's mom. Okay. we grew up in her house. Okay, 1104 13th Avenue. That's where we grew up. We being, at the time, it was four kids and my mom, and then three of my cousins, right? My grandma was a stickler for diction. Mm-hmm. And perhaps it had a lot to do with her growing up as a sharecropper, her moving, her believing in education, her believing in us being aware of what's going on, right, and being able to be us, but the perception of us not being what people think it should be. And so we would say ain't, she'll check us real quick. We would say whenever our diction was off, she would check us real quick. And so in addition to that, practice in real time all the time, and my just love for words and Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Fannie Lou Hamer. I mean, I can go on and listening to how their words move people to do certain things and believe certain things.
Yeah.
Just was attraction to me, something that I always, even to this day,
yeah, I think
I listen to.
That's the story AJ told me, was you'd be up in the room listening to these political speeches from the 60s or, and kind of just so the kids would be outside playing and you'd be up there just listening to these speeches of great leaders and figures, and yeah.
That was me. That is me, even to this day.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know, it's one of my hobbies, I guess you could say.
Yeah. We have some things in common. Just, my grandparents also mostly lived in Rock Island. Those connections to sports, like my dad was the first NCAA scholar athlete from Augustana College's wrestling program.
Wow.
And so just that and then I played sports. I think my girls basketball team, maybe we got knocked down a peg, but until a few years ago we were like the best team in the. Are we even? Okay.
Elite Eight, right?
Yeah.
I think you both made Elite Eight.
Okay. Yeah. So all those, faith, sports, community involvement. I think my grandpa was a city council person, and your dad was somehow involved in.
Yeah.
What was his role?
He was an alder person for 16 years.
Yeah.
As well.
Maybe that's why when we met all those years ago, we hit it off.
We've always been connected, and we had no clue.
Yes.
Yeah, and actually, I remember sitting in high school, and this is a story I don't think I've ever told you. Signey and Taylor's garage. Their dad.
My Uncle John.
Your Uncle John. I was in his garage. Didn't he run for mayor?
He didn't run for mayor, but my grandpa, his dad was, he ran for mayor, yes.
Okay.
So we have all these signs like Morris for mayor and yeah.
And I remember sitting in the garage with him, and him and I had a talk about the process of, like, at the time, about like how that he was a grassroots election, a campaign, and things of that sort. And so that's a memory I have, being in that garage, and so our family was connected way before you and I actually met. So,
but my grandpa was kind of embroiled in a scandal, and it didn't end up well for him. So.
I think I remember that story as well, but I didn't. But
so, that's for another podcast.
Yeah.
We could tell that story.
Yeah.
But yeah. But just a lot of like engagement in your community, all the stuff with sports, being part of something that's bigger than yourself, leading people, motivating people, because you're a coach now for both Rocky and the Steam Wheelers, so kind of a leader of young men. And
me and Big started coaching girls basketball.
I saw that. Oh my gosh, yeah. I saw that on Facebook, I think.
Yeah, I can't forget my girls. Because if they hear this, they would definitely let me know I forgot about them. So
yeah,
6th grade girls basketball. They're the best. They're better than my boys.
Yeah.
I'll say that all day.
Yeah. I tried to pay my daughter to play basketball. My oldest is 5'10", and she wasn't bad, but she doesn't like it. And I'm like, what if I just paid you to try out? And she's like, no, I don't want to play basketball.
I don't want to play basketball.
Okay, fine.
You tried.
I tried.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A for effort.
My little ones are athletes, but my first two, they're athletic, but they're not into it. And, you got to just go with what your kids
teach your
like.
own, you got to hold off, and maybe a few years from now you have the kids. You can go to the games and yell and scream, and don't be the mom yelling at the referee though.
I would never.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so just kind of raised to be engaged, to pay attention.
Yeah. And even so, when I went to Grant Elementary School, which is now closed, and so that was my first involvement with any kind of political action, I guess you could say.
Elementary school.
It was toward the end of my 5th grade year, I think, when we learned they planned on closing the school, or maybe early 5th grade. But now we could talk about our school because it was our school. You right? So we had our own little jokes as students about whatever the school and all that. But when we learned they were trying to close our school, what do you mean you're going to close our school? We weren't happy about that, right? This is our school. And so feeling the tension and just talking to my peers in the moment, and even just having what I was feeling, and even seeing some of the reaction that the teachers and administration had in the building, I wrote a letter. And fortunately for me, I had a dad who was an alder person, who also it was in his ward, right? And the community rallied, and there were different protests and things of that sort. But in particular, attending school board meetings. And I wrote a letter, and I remember telling my dad and my teacher about this letter, and I was like, I want to read it to the school board. And my dad was like, you're going to read it to the school board. Cool, awesome. And 5th grade me, big glasses, big head, small body, went up there and read this letter to the school board and superintendent, stating my case as a 5th grader, why the school should be invested upon, and instead of, it's not our fault our books aren't the same as other schools. It's not our fault our building isn't as upkept as other schools, right? And I remember the superintendent at the time, I will not say his name, used pieces of a 5th grader's words to state his case, as to why the school should be closed. And so clearly they closed the school, and I remember the school now is where Thurgood Marshall is currently. Thurgood Marshall at the time was somewhere in this area here, not too far from here.
Yeah. Down by the new administration center.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And I remember there being verbiage stating that it made more sense for Thurgood Marshall to be where it currently is, because most students who will go to Thurgood Marshall already live there, which I always thought was interesting. But not to get into all that.
But even at that young age, being involved in that way and figuring out or observing how power works, going to a council meeting, maybe knowing they'd already made up their mind, or a school board meeting, and you're there and you're sharing your thoughts and you're advocating for your school, but you can maybe see that these adults have probably already decided.
Oh, yeah.
And then I noticed growing up that, like, by the time I graduated high school, the kids in the top 10 of my high school class, we pretty much all went to the same elementary school. So you're also starting to see this pattern of, like, wait a second, what are you saying about my school and the outcomes for the kids that go to my school, and why is that different?
Yep.
Why are all the kids going to Thurgood Marshall from my ward?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're starting to kind of get into this in fifth grade.
In addition to still being that kid who is in the room listening to John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and all these people's speeches, I'm still that kid, right? I'm still that kid who I got my degree in history. I've always loved history, and so I'm that kid who knew as a child that my grandma came up here how she did. I'm still that kid. I'm recognizing these things. And the thing about that moment for me, I remember sitting there, and in that moment, there at the school board meeting, and that's where I realized, Annika, that people like me need to be in chairs like those. And those are the chairs that the superintendent and the school board members are sitting in to make said decision. It was clear to me as a fifth grader that the people who I was amongst, community, who I call real people, were in the wrong chairs. And from that point on, I had a conviction in my heart that not that I need to be in that chair or every chair or that I had the solution, but I recognized that my mom always told me this, but I recognized from others that I'm a natural born leader. And that's something that you can't take for granted. It's something that you cannot take advantage of. And so even as a child, I can go on and on about the different type of leadership roles that was bestowed on me by my peers most times, or adults who are supposed to do that. And so a leader isn't always in that chair, but it's helping develop people to be in chairs, right? And so the conviction for me was clear at fifth grade that that was my life, and my life was going to be being the best leader I could be, which meant being honest, being knowledgeable, being open with people, being able to be communicative, and being real.
Yeah.
And find opportunities and seeking opportunities that you're prepared for to impact and affect change. And that's being in chairs to do so.
Yeah. You are one of the busiest people I know, and I'm a pretty busy person. I think but just people do look to you. And so you're doing the West End revitalization, you're coaching 3 teams, I always see pictures of you just mixing it up with your nephews, and you are a person I can tell who really loves family. So just being around the people that you love and being a positive, loving influence, and I don't know, you're always kind of engaging in your community, and it's so cool to see. I'm really curious, what was it like to grow up in Rock Island, being a young Black man, and having people, what your grandma said, view you a certain way, and then knowing all this goodness and leadership and talent and, all this stuff going on inside of you that you felt like, someday I want to be in that chair, and I want the people around me to be in those chairs. Did you feel like people recognized that in you from a young age outside of your family or, your ward? Or did you run into problems with people viewing you as like another Black kid from Rock Island?
It's a great question.
Is that too personal?
No. Annika, we're going to have a real talk here. I told you, I love you very much, okay? And I mean that. Before I answer that question, I'm going to get here. I really do.
Yeah.
I really do. I appreciate you so very much. So, and I tell people all the time, you, Amy, Tamara, I can go. I mean,
Yeah.
all of you all. I love you all so much, and I appreciate you all so much. The person I am today, I grew so much in our time. You working with me, in that short time.
Well,
Really,
and for the listeners who might not know, we met and then you ended up running for mayor, and I was a part of that.
yes, yes.
Unfortunately, I didn't get to help you run for senator because I started
State rep.
having, for state rep, because I started having debilitating heart palpitations related to anemia, but I didn't know it at the time, so I'm sorry I missed out on that.
But
I'm all better. But that's how we know each other. I was,
you're right.
yeah.
And I'm gonna answer your question, but I gotta say this. I have to say this. Although you or Amy or Tamara didn't have the time to help me in my state rep campaign, you did, because the foundation was set. The best story I can say is I remember I wanted to. I don't know if you remember this or not. First of all, I got you all to agree to be on my team. I don't know how. Early mid July of 21, I think it was, or 20. I wanted to announce I was running for mayor in August. You all were like, "No, we're not." I was like, "Yeah, we're good." "No, we're not." I was like, "Yes." It was like, "Thurgood, no, we're not. We're announcing." All right, cool. Long story short, that was the best decision. Not only for the announcement, but as for me as a leader, I could have very well been like, "Nope, that's what we're doing."
Mm-hmm.
Right? But I trusted all of what you all were saying. You all were right, really and truly. But also, I think that set the tone for what I believe experience was, as far as my willingness to listen, adjust based off of what I was getting from you all, be myself, right? And so I really appreciate you all so much, because the foundation of that my mayoral campaign was really the reason why we had the success we had in my state rep campaign, with less people helping us out, because we already knew what to do. We already had certain things done. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
I did send out all of your postcards to the wrong addresses. That was one of the worst mistakes I've made in my life. I made the spreadsheet.
Yes,
I erased the first line.
I forgot about that.
So everyone's postcards went to their next door neighbor instead of to their house. Oh my God, I almost threw up. We
live, we learn. We live, we learn.
You were so nice to me. I was like, you spent all your campaign money on these postcards. I literally sent them all. That was my job. I sent them all to the wrong addresses. And you were so kind and always so collaborative. And so I guess maybe I witnessed some of that, of just knowing you and then watching you go out in the public and have people receive you in a certain way. So I'm just wondering, like, your experience growing up,
Great segue. See, this is why you perfect for this. But for me, though, honestly, Annika, I think I had a different experience than a lot of my peers. A lot of black boys like me. And maybe it was because my dad was an older person, so I saw and knew different. My Aunt Early, she would tell me every time she's seen me, and she would make me recite, "I'm destined for greatness. I'm destined for greatness. I'm a natural leader." So at some point, you develop a certain level of confidence, right? And belief that begins to be infectious, right? And it might be infectious to the people around you, and maybe that's why you're perceived to be this natural leader, right? Because of how you carry yourself. But also, it may also be hard to ignore, right? So, although at Grant, most of my teachers, like my counselor, our principals, all minorities or people of color, I should say. So when I went to Washington, different as far as teachers, and entirely different. Even the school population, right? But because I went to Grant, I had a level of confidence in myself that I don't think other students who went to Lincoln or Eugene Field. I'm seeing you be clear. Other black students that went to others, because at Grant, I can walk in the hallways and I'll see little poster clippings of Madam C.J. Walker. I'll see poster clippings of George Washington Carver, right? And all these people who look like Aretha Franklin. I mean, I can go on and on. Entertainers, architect, anybody. Charles Drew. Like, I saw people every day who looked like me, who did phenomenal things. And those things transcended dribbling a basketball or carrying football, although I love those things, right? And so that's why at the early age, I never wanted to go to NBA or NFL. I never did. I loved the sport. That was never a goal of mine, ever. And so even at Washington, people perceive, like, I'm not saying they see. What I can say is I never felt that I was being treated a certain way. And that's probably a lot. Why do I say never? That's a lie. But the confidence I had in myself, I didn't affect me, right? And so I think, like I said, I think it's hard to ignore, and also was infectious in some ways. And so really and truly, there were certain instances, I guess, where I can probably, if I wanted to nitpick, or not nitpick, but be honest. But for me, I think that kind of shift that you're probably asking me about was probably more in college.
Okay.
Really when I was at William Penn.
Yeah.
So
through elementary school, junior high, high school, you had a good experience, and you felt like you could walk out into the world with confidence and be unaffected by people who might view you in a different way or see you in a different light.
Oh yeah, and I think a lot of that probably was my family, household, and people who were close to me, building that up in me. But as I sit here and think about it now, there were things, right? But how I addressed it, I was like, so it's my senior year of high school. Up until my senior year, the people who painted up at basketball games and whatnot, mostly white guys. My senior year, not so much. It was me, Nico, Wes. I mean, that's enough right there. Chris, that's 4, right? And then we had Nate Gray. We had Devin Goebel. We had Kyle Carsons, right? So we had a couple. But the numbers switched. And so when I would attend basketball games with my dad as a child, all the way up to, me being in high school, people who painted up, having a good time.
What does painted up mean?
So, I'm sorry. So, at the
I'm a lot older
at
than
the
you.
football games and basketball games, paint.
Oh, like you'd paint an ROCK on your chest or
So we
something.
get all the red paint or, whatever letter, and then, we do our own thing. So, and have people naming our back and all that good stuff. So, before that, I played high school basketball a little bit as well. But my senior year, I just wanted to enjoy it. So, like I said before, like all those other guys who did it, they would have a great time, like chants with the crowd. Sometime during timeouts or something, or intermission, they'll do cartwheels on the court. As so long the cheerleaders aren't doing, just a good time. So, our senior year, first game of the year, we're just doing what we do.
Yeah.
What we see those do. So, I got called into the principal's office the next week of school because I guess it's a problem now. We're being a distraction to the game. Like, that doesn't make sense. I'm stating my case. The principal's like, yeah, I think you're kind of right, Thurgood, but I said, okay. So they try to tell us we had to stand behind this little red tape of line, and we couldn't go past that line. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I'm like, we're not. I said, I'm not standing behind this line. Like, this has never been an issue. We have done nothing,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. All right, cool. Well, Thurgood, when after the national anthem, you have to be behind this line. All right, whatever. I defy it. So I'm literally just standing in front of the line. Now I'm getting handcuffed, taken out of the gym
At Rock Island High School?
during a game. Like, this is during a game.
Wow.
On a Friday night, a conference game. And this is the year that we won state. So we have a really good basketball team. And so now I'm in the back in the hallway, and it's the officer who did it to me, and security guard and somebody else. By that time, a friend of mine who went to school with my dad and also went to the same church as us with my mom came down. She seen what happened and trying to help me out. Shout out to Miss Jacobs. We love Miss Jacobs. And so my point to them is, like, why are we doing this? The whole time I'm out there, the whole student section is chanting my nickname, TB2. They're chanting my name. Security guard was like, Thurgood, like, we need you out here. I'm like, look what y'all did.
Yeah.
You were saying we were a distraction. Whole time now you have made a distraction.
Yeah. For
what? So ultimately they end up changing the rule, letting us do what we were. But my point is saying that's an example to where I think it did not affect me, right? In the sense of, like,
I mean, it's affects someone to be handcuffed in front of the entire student body and walked out of the gym.
But I don't think I reacted.
Yeah.
That in ways that some of my peers would have.
Yeah.
Right. And also I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's where I kind of say, even them doing that to me, the security guard, he knew, like, we're tripping right now. Like, this is Thurgood. Mm-hmm. You follow what I'm saying? And so that's kind of, I don't know if it's making sense, but that's what I'm getting at, as far as I was aware of certain things. Things may have happened to me, but I always felt in control. Yeah. I always felt that.
Well, it sounds like you had relationships. There were always some people around you who really knew you and saw you for who you were, and there was some safety in that because people could recognize, here's this kid, so you might have been experiencing some things that were challenging, but in your mind, you had a way of not, because I've never really heard you complain about that stuff, and I think I would, I don't know. So you just brushed it off, or you just composed yourself and communicated and had relationships and just worked through it. You just kept continually working through it.
I did what I learned. I did what I mean, I'm not perfect, but I told you my grandma was a sharecropper. I learned years later that my grandfather my grandpa Brooks, Grandpa Brooks, his dad was lynched in Texas. And so if I were to exclude personal things from my family and just look alone at the history of people and how they got here, and consider what I was diving into as a child that we already talked about before, who the hell am I to really complain about things that happen like that to me? Who am I? Especially if I'm able to communicate how my grandma was checking me with my diction. There's a reason why she was saying that. There's a reason why she was telling us, watch the news whether you like it or not. You got to be aware of what's going on, local, state, and federally. Mm-hmm. There's a reason why those things, because how you're able to communicate, compose yourself, foresee certain things, because have a certain understanding, helps you foresee certain things. And then by building a relationship with people, it does allow you to feel and feel like you're in control, even in the midst of chaos.
Yeah.
So I was leaning on and practicing in real time what I was taught.
That is a toolbox of strategies and kind of to protect you. Your grandma in some ways is trying to protect you and to help you be successful in the world that you are living in, but that's like an extra layer of work all the time. I mean, is that ever exhausting to have to, because your family came from a place where people said ain't, and it's like, okay, well, it doesn't take away from how intelligent someone is or how loving they are, or, so it's like, okay, well, we can't say that anymore. And fine, whatever. But that level of like having to rework things to present so that the world can view you in a way where you can accomplish your goals, that's just a level of like work to do every day. Does that ever get exhausting? It's not saying ain't is a small example of that, but
I follow you.
You had a lot of pressure to cut your hair when you've been running for different things.
Yeah.
Because maybe someone would just pay attention to your hair and not to you, or
yeah. So I would say it's not exhausting for me, because I think I've practiced so much. Like, this is literally, Annika, when I tell you 5th grade, I remember almost what chair I was sitting in when they used to have, how it used to be said about in the library, the school board meetings. I remember exactly where I was sitting at, and I can still to this day see the superintendent from the angle where I was. That's how clear it is to me in the moment of really understanding that and feeling that we need to be in those chairs. And so from that moment, like I said, I wasn't perfect, right? But I'm one of the only people in my age group. We were the kids who Facebook was becoming a thing in high school. Like, so MySpace was there when I was in junior high, right? Facebook started to come in real when I was in high school, right? And so social media was starting to really develop. My point here is I knew better what to share in some ways. You follow me? So what I'm getting at here is I had a conviction even from then of how to operate in a lot of ways, although imperfect at times, like in public. So I was practicing. This muscle, this toolbox. I was using these tools from an early age. And so now it's not exhausting for me because it's practiced, right? It may be why certain people close to me, I love, say, I overthink a lot of things, right? It may be problematic with how I spend my time sometimes with people I love, right? Because there's times I was at my niece's promotion, her for pre-K promotion this past a couple months ago. In between her sets and her being promoted, I'm drawing up plays for practice, right? So that can be problematic if that makes sense, right? And so, but for me overall, it's not really a layer of extra work because it's so practiced.
Yeah. I just am a complainer, and so you're not. But I remember during your campaign feeling really frustrated by how the news covered you, for example. Like, you have a college degree, you worked in banking, you've just had really powerful jobs that would connect you to that type of work, and the news headline would be like, local activist, it was just, so, I mean.
Do you remember, I'm sorry, do you remember my campaign, earlier in my campaign, I told you all, I said, we're not going to get endorsed by in the editorial. We're not going to get this endorsement. I named them off. You all were like, well, why not? I was like, we'll do the work for it. We'll treat everybody this. We'll be us. We're not going to get them. And remember, we didn't get them. I was like, you say. I was like, so my point here is, when you understand like a level of foundation, like, again, think about history. It truly helps you kind of foresee what may be happening, right? And so when you're able to foresee something, you're able to manage your emotions differently when it happens in real time, right? And so I think a lot of times, like, am in that mode of like thinking, okay, where's that gonna be? Okay, so that when it happens, we're good to go. And mainly because even when we lost, see me sit up when I felt when we lost. Even when we lost, for as hurt as I was,
by such a small margin.
Yes,
Yeah.
both times.
Yeah.
Even when we lost, especially I used my state rep campaign. We lost by 23 votes. I felt so terrible for Amelia, like, the hell with me. I felt terrible for Amelia in that moment.
Because she'd been helping you and managing your campaign, and yeah.
You know, and so even with you all, right? And so that's what I'm getting at, is because as a leader, I feel like certain responsibility,
Yeah.
right? And that comes with it.
I just admire that, you talked about Grantwood and standing up for it, but the school closed. And you've run for 2 offices and barely lost. And I just see you still out there working for your community. Like, you don't even hardly take a break to just, I mean, I think I would, you're just back out there helping to build things and grow things and be with people. And so far, some of that story has been just some losses, but this kind of persistent nature of trying to improve the lives of the people around you, which is pretty cool. What do you think about the youth these days? How are they doing? How do we help them? How do we help the Rock Island youth these days? My daughter's going to be a sophomore at Rocky.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Be real with them. I mean, that's where my success lies, I think, with kids. First of all, kids aren't stupid. Like, I don't know why we treat them as such. Be real with them. Because when they know it's real, they'll run through a wall for you. And they will really do their best to take in what you're giving them, right? And then once you're able to do that, outside of how we can invest up in, I just saw somewhere the other day, the mayor in Baltimore, they put more money into rec programs, after-school programs, work programs, literacy programs, and all of a sudden, the crime rate has dropped, I think, like 60%.
Wow.
Who would have thought, if you give kids things to do with each other constructively, that they won't do silly stuff?
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Right? And so...
And I always, forget when I'm hosting this that I know you, but other people might not who are listening to this. So what is your current job? Because you are, in addition to coaching, what's your current role with the city of Rock Island?
So I work at the Martin Luther King Center as a West End revitalization coordinator. I'm one of 3. And so I guess I get into that a little bit.
Yeah, what do you do?
So back in 2019-ish, the city was approached by John Deere because they wanted to invest in Rock Island significantly, and all the departments of the city, which the King Center is, put together proposals, initiated a workforce program that the King Center presented. John Deere selected that, but then asked the King Center to go back to the drawing board and dream bigger. They asked them to also go back and ask the community what the community really, really wanted. So that put forth this assessment that was done. COVID happened, so it had to be done in a more creative way, but it was able to be done with real people in the West End of Rock Island. That assessment brought back 5 issue areas: housing and land, infrastructure and visual design, economic vitality, assets and income, and civic capital. From those 5 issue areas, there are recommendations, of course, in the assessment. So a steering committee was put together, 7 people in the community who looked at this entire assessment of over 300 pages, put together working group members for each issue area. I was hired. I think that was 22, maybe. And my job at that time was then to work with each working group so they can drill in on their issue area to create a plan behind said recommendations within each working or each issue area, because we were trying to have a plan for, that would have been March 24, I think. And so we were able to do that, just that. We had put together a 3 to 5 year plan behind each of those issue areas. Actually, a cross-cutting sector was created because Franklin Field became, or not became, it is. I'll say it became because if you're up from the West End, I guess you don't care to know that Franklin Field has been vacant for 40 years. But Franklin Field, a potential SSA, and the need for a CDC, which is a Community Development Corporation, to be created that could do the work of the 5 issue areas. And so that was essentially the plan, if you're following me right.
Yeah.
And so what I do now, Avery was hired last April. And then Miss Jarrett was recently hired a couple months ago. What we do day to day is build relationships with community, but also partners, because the idea of the West End Revitalization is collaborative impact. Is we're not doing the work. Like, so I'm not real handy with my hands, which I can be a lot better. So I'm not gonna go and fix houses, but I can go work to find people who are trusted and non-extractive to come and do the work in the community, possibly.
What's non-extractive mean?
Non-extractive would be not coming in our community to take advantage of us.
Yes. Okay.
Right?
I love that term. I haven't had that language before, but a lot of programs that come down from the feds or the state, it does seem like there are entities that are kind of hip to those dollars, and they'll come in and with their own contractors and their own, and then it's like everybody's gone and all those dollars kind of went to these. It's like moths to a flame. So non-extractive, I love that.
Yeah, and even when you work with what I would say extractive partners, that takes time. So building real relationship with non-extractive partners takes time.
Yeah.
Right. And so behind the plan, we try to find folks to do the work, because ultimately, Annika, I really believe in what everyday things I do, but my job isn't to help people. I sincerely believe my job is not to help you. My job is to empower you to do. My job is to empower you to be, whether it's through awareness, whether it's through confidence, whatever it is, because that's part of the old saying: if I can teach you a fish, you can eat for a lifetime, right? And even the folks that I mentioned before that I revere, the best thing they did for me, what I mentioned before, is build confidence in me, and that's why I'm able to react the way I react when the officer put handcuffs on me, and get the response that you follow me. And so we're not in the helping business at the West End Revitalization. We're trying to find partners to work collaboratively with us to attack finances and how we can get banking partners in the West End Rock Island. We're going to work with partners to help us find the proper grocers. And the reason why Ms. Jarrett was hired in particular is because there's a piece in the West End Revitalization plan. That was a community plan for participatory budgeting.
Yeah.
It's finding, and participatory budgeting is having a pot of money that the community can create ideas and then vote on these ideas and then spend the money on the way that it was voted on, right? So it's a very progressive, democratic process of investment in the community. And so part of the plan that we have right there in black and white talks about having, I think it's $100,000 in 3 years to do just that, and then seeing how we can build up on that. So we have $40,000 that the community will be voting on in late August, early September to spend. The Thurgood Marshall kids, so part of the West End work we've done over this year. We have a club at Thurgood Marshall. So Avery and I went there every Friday. The best thing I've done every week, and wow, the best thing I've done every week. They earned $10,000 because it was $50,000, but Avery and I were like, why can't they get 10?
Yeah. And
they do the same process within the cells in the school, and they did just that by the end of the school year. And so the work that we're doing, as I said, is building partnership with the community, building partners with that do the work of the plan that we need, the resources we need in the community, finding those folks to show them where they could be helpful, but also the need and how they kind of coexist together, and how we can bring real partners here. So that's what I do day to day in the West End.
And I've been watching all the different meetings. So I heard Dylan actually recommended to the city's economic team that they model what you're doing in the West End with the participatory budgeting and just your practices, that whatever's happening in the West End is just a model for how to do community development well, and that the city's staff should really adopt or get with you guys. I don't know if they have yet, but in the last council meeting, that was the recommendation, to like touch base with them in the West End, see what they're doing, and bring those practices back to the bigger city. Because what I've heard is that the engagement, the way you've engaged the community, gotten people to come to things, you know, has been really powerful. And then I watched a city or a school board meeting, and you popped up presenting on the Thurgood Marshall students, and then one of the students stood up and gave the, you know, and even pointing out that, like, why don't we get the same food as kids in the other schools? Our cafeteria is not serving the same things that all the other kids get. And so just, you know, what I hear you saying is that being real with kids and helping them understand and flex their power.
Yeah.
You know, that, and the way that you're trying to help or not help, the way that you're engaging the community isn't to say, you know, you're a baby bird in a nest, and when I fly by and drop some crumbs to you, you can scramble for them. You're saying, you know, we are going to teach you to fly to get you. And I think that's like, this is just a side rant, but I don't know. This is a weird thing to say maybe, but there seems to be some shrinking of the federal government, maybe. And I have a lot of, like, this big bill that just came through, you know, how vulnerable people are going to become more vulnerable. But on the flip side of that, I can see these opportunities for more self-governance of, it does not feel good to wait for something from way out there to decide if my life is going to be better or worse. And, you know, the process that you're in, or how do we get people to be like, as a community, how do we make things happen? Partnering that with, yes, we do need stuff. We need stuff from the federal government too, but just like more local empowerment, more local, I don't know. I think it's really cool. I'm rambling now.
No, but because that's where the power is. And I'm so glad that you know, said, because the kids did that.
Yeah.
They went up, took the mic, and they stated what they stated. We didn't tell them what to say. All we did was work with them. So part of what we did throughout the school year with them. First, I walked in there the first day. I told them, I might have said it at the school board meeting, I told them, nobody cares about you. They looked at me like, who is this dude to walk in my... I said, nobody cares about you. I mean, isn't that how you feel? Well, yeah. I said, I know. Nobody cares about the West End. At least historically, that's how it's felt. Now, we start to work through the feeling they have of being a Thurgood Marshall student, which is a microcosm of how a West End resident feels being a citizen, a resident of Rock Island. Right? And so we started to work with these students behind, okay, as a Thurgood Marshall student, you feel unheard. Although you notice and you know the problems. As a West End resident, we feel unheard. Although we know the problems. Right? And being unheard, at one time, there was a lot more activity and engagement. Not just across the country, but right here in the West End. But what do you do when you fight against a highway being put in your neighborhood, but they do it anyway? What do you do when you fight against knocking out blocks and blocks of businesses in your neighborhood, but they do it anyway? What do you do when they promise a basketball and rec and a state-of-the-art facility at the King Center, but they give you a facility? What do you do? So your voice starts to say, well, you as an individual start to minimize your voice. Tupac said, when you're young, you can lift weights and you want to fight, but you get older, they take the will when you want to lift weights, you can't fight no more. Right? And so that happens. And then, so what do you tell your kids or teach them at all? Right? And so that's the experience of a West End resident overall. So you think about these kids and how they feel, first of all, how they got there. Because what was said when I was a child became true. Rock Island High School, the Rock Island District, now I'm about to ramble. Rock Island School District is 1/3 African American Black, actually a little more. I don't want to tell you, a little more, but approximately 1/3 Black, 1/3 white, and then a collection of other, like a host, because we're very diverse.
Yeah, 33 languages are spoken at Rocky.
And so what I'm getting at here is, how in the hell does Thurgood Marshall, the only alternative school, represent upwards of 85% of Black African American students within the district? That does not make sense. Just doesn't. So when I'm talking to these students, how they got there is important. That speaks to how they feel, because they're not stupid. They're not. I talk to them every day. They're not stupid kids, right? And so we were real with them, Monica, starting off, and we were real in the sense of, we're gonna be here every week. Avery and I showed up every week. Every Friday we showed up, and we talked about music, how music impacts you in your life, listening to it and all that good stuff. And actually, we talked to them how it was intentional. Some of the things that happens with their music to us was intentional behind private prisons even. So they learned about private prisons and what private prisons does and how they learned about all that good stuff. Yeah. And then we moved into, okay, local politics. What's your mayor do? Who is your mayor? What your alderperson does? What an alderperson does? Who is your alderperson? Where are their borders? What type of government does the city of Rock Island have? Which means we have a city manager. So we went to that. School board. Okay, cool. County board, county clerk, sheriff. Okay, state rep. We went into that. And then we touched on federal because, like, to your point, we're here.
Yeah.
Right? And then now they're hosting the mayoral automatic municipal forum.
Wow.
We work with the NAACP to where the kids curate the questions. We're the moderators, the timekeepers for the municipal and school board election forums. One was on a Monday in a week, and one was on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
They did it all.
Wow.
From there, we start working on participatory budgeting and a few other things. And so my point, long point, because you got me worked up, I love those kids. My long point is, we told them, hey, you're going to go to the school board and present to the school board. And we help refresh certain things that they knew, but they were able to connect. So they put the connection behind. So yeah, I get my diploma and it says Rock Island High School. I'm a Rocky student. Yeah. Huh. So if I'm a Rocky student, then yes. Yes. So did I help them? No. We built a level of confidence in them.
But you did hold a mirror and reflected back these words, these things I've heard you say. You are smart. You are capable. You deserve to understand your situation and what led up to the reality that you live in now. The things you do matter. So, in the therapy world, we look a lot at core beliefs, and we all hold core beliefs about ourselves and about the world around us. So I specialize in trauma, and so I might go along my life feeling I'm pretty safe, and people around me will generally take care of me or keep me safe too. And then maybe something really scary happens. And in a night, it could change to, I am not safe. And the people around me are bad, you know. So when you think about kids growing up, like for yourself, you had something in you, what your aunt made you recite to her, it's building a core belief about self. I am valuable. I am precious. I'm good. So you can kind of had that sense within yourself, and then maybe out in the world, whatever the world said didn't impact you as much. It sounds like you walked into this room of kids and kind of confirmed for them that their perception that the world doesn't quite care about them is probably very valid and real and probably reflected in what they believe. But it sounds like you're trying to shift what they believe about themselves. Would you say those kids have trouble believing in their own goodness or talent or worth, or different than like your experience of kind of generally knowing that you're good even from a young age?
I would say yeah. On the surface, I would say yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let me be fair, right? And what I try to do is exactly what you said. I'm a firm believer that the reasons why you are a victim is the reason why you should be a victor.
Mm.
So when I went to college, my roommate, his name was Brandon. He grew up in Crystal Lake, Illinois. So anybody that is aware of Crystal Lake?
I've never been.
Okay, well, Crystal Lake.
Full of crystal?
Maybe some white crystals.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I love Brandon. Brandon is one of my best friends to this day. But it's predominantly white. It's like 90-something% white town, right? Suburb of Chicago. And so it's safe to say Brandon didn't have many experiences with people who look like me,
Mm-hmm.
besides what he saw on TV. A lot of times Fox, right? And so when him and I became friends and roommates, we had interesting discussions, but I never once felt he was racist or isn't. None of that, right? And so that relationship for me, like how that developed, helped me understand how people think and how people can be misunderstood and how people can grow,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when I think about the things he was able to do, so he probably never had to make sugar bread because he probably had a pantry full of food,
Mm-hmm.
right? There are certain things he didn't have to grow up and do that because I did, now I'm able to be, maybe I'm more creative in some ways, right? Because I'm using different muscles because as a child I had to endure certain things, right? And because I grew up a certain way where I may have had certain oppressive things happen to me, now I'm able to problem solve differently.
Mm-hmm.
You follow me? And so I could sit in the reasons why I'm a victim, and I hate to say it like that because I don't want to sound insensitive, right? Because I recognize what victims are,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I can sit in that or recognize that it has really sharpened me in a lot of different ways, in ways in which people who didn't have to go through certain things have no clue. And that's why we see people who we call privileged,
Mm-hmm.
and we classify them as toddlers in how they react to certain things, right? That's why we have some leaders who have always had, who don't know how to be have any empathy
Mm-hmm.
or sympathy, right? Because they have never had to be in certain situations. So even with those kids, I'm big up on massaging those things that people told are bad for them and help them understand that, okay, yeah, but this is where your power is. This is where
Yeah.
your power is.
That resilience, like post-traumatic stress, bad things happen or something traumatizing, and it can destabilize someone, and it's real. But some people go through like post-traumatic growth, so it's kind of a similar thing happens, and you grow on the other end of it. And what's interesting about that is often it's not the events that happen to you, it's how the people around you show up for you in the aftermath. So two people could go through the same experience, and this person, when they go and talk to someone about it, it's like, that didn't matter, not a big deal. You know, laugh it off, don't take it seriously, don't provide or offer any support, or don't validate it as even being true. And they can have one outcome. And then, you know, if you have trauma happen over here and the first person that interacts with that person, they're like, wow, that really happened. And, you know, I'm here for you. What do you need? You have community around you. Those are the folks that tend to grow from that. So it sounds like you are validating these kids' experiences, but then like through community and being present and showing up, and how do we grow through this?
Yeah.
How do you grow through these challenges?
Yeah, because, and that's part of being real, in my opinion, is like I said, validating those experiences. Because often they're told, that's not why you're here. Like, you did X, Y, you got in a fight. Well, they probably did get in a fight, but they also are tired of being talked to as if they're stupid.
Yeah.
They also are aware of what we call now microaggressions. And you don't even care that this child is taking care of their grandma. True story. I have a kid who basically take care of their grandma. Their grandma is disabled, cannot work. They have responsibilities at home like that that you don't care about, clearly, because of how you treat them, welcome them. So how might they respond in a world where other options are available to them or not?
Yeah.
Right? So I love work I do with those kids, and not just Thurgood Marshall kids, all the kids. You know, that's kind of how I am as a coach, and kind of.
I did read in the revitalization report that like status quo mental health stuff isn't working.
Oh no.
And kind of part of this is somehow reimagining how do you do mental health, you know, which I just find interesting as a therapist, and can see when people's basic needs aren't being met, it's hard to talk about depression or anxiety, or, you know, if someone is taking care of a disabled person or doesn't have adequate food or housing or, you know, laundry. It's like, I can't talk to you about my person right now. I need help. You know, I need support in the basic stuff before we can move on to the other stuff. Or you could do them at the same time. But I don't know. I'm curious to see what comes out of that, because, yeah. Do you have any ideas about
the Thurgood Marshall?
Well, just the idea of mental health.
Oh,
and
okay,
the
okay,
existing the existing structures for mental health not working. You know, like going to an office and talking to someone who looks like me, and it's like, you know, is that depression? Is it anxiety? But it's like, well, part of that is probably poverty, you know, that's got you down, and you know.
But it's also it has a lot of historic like context to it. So, for me as a child, we were told, "Well, stay in the house, happen in the house." But why do you think my grandma, who probably heard that from her parents, who had a sharecropping experience as a child, was told that? Because if my grandma was a sharecropper, what do you think her parents' were?
Yeah.
And so think about, things are passed down. Stories might change, might be fabricated in some ways. What is said as far as it might change, but surely is historic context to a slave telling their child, what happens in this here, don't say outside of here.
Yeah.
Especially to somebody who don't look like you. Maybe teach them how to read in that cabin.
Yeah.
Don't tell them I'm teaching them how to read.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of historical context to that we don't even think about.
Yeah, that intergenerational storytelling or ways of being, or that are.
So surely might be poverty and maybe confidence, or Surely, yes, but there's also a lot of historic context to a lot of things that we do to this day that we can't put our finger on necessarily.
There's like this concept of epigenetics, and one of the most interesting studies is they took these mice, and there was like a mouse that I can't remember if the mouse was pregnant, and they electrified the cage, and they would spray like mint in the cage, and every time the mint smell would come, the mouse would get a zap, and the mice's grand mice would have a stress reaction to mint, even though they weren't present for that. It was like passed down an aversion to mint through what they call epigenetics, and they've done these studies to show exactly what you're talking about, that a caution towards something or an aversion to something that might become unsafe is probably like passed down in our DNA to some extent.
Yeah. Energies and things like that, and genes, like that's real, right? So I think it's getting better as far as mental health awareness and things of that sort. But I think, unfortunately, as a lot of things in America with people of color, things of that sort are slower to be invested up in our community or brought to, or whatever case may be, or accepted.
Yeah, or they need, to your point, more of a ground up approach.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it might look different. It might be a different intervention. It might not be just sitting alone in a room talking to one other person. We'll have to keep in touch on that, because I'm really interested in the mental health part of it.
We're working on that, and I think that's part of that's our argument about the status quo. It can't be status quo, because the work we see from the time we worked with a lot of these kids to today. The principal told us how they have changed how they operate within the school and treat these kids within the school because of the work we're doing with the kids, but how they have started to change and develop and grow since working with us.
Wow.
Right? And even that school board meeting that you talked about, the kids are going to see real changes.
Yeah.
They're going to see real changes. So from the superintendent on down, school board members, not only do they tell us that, but menu options are available to them now, as far as how they're going to be set up, how their menu looks, and other things. So they feel the power and they see it, and that's the thing that I love the most.
That's so cool. Yeah, and it's like those kids show up with a part of themselves that has become the most protective and sometimes disengaging. Like, well, I get in trouble if I fight. Nobody does anything if I use my voice. Disengaging becomes like a survival strategy, because if you care and are constantly disappointed, that is really exhausting. And so I think our human spirits are just self-protective. Like, I'll just stop paying attention. I won't try to be invested because it hurts to, yeah.
So who the kids turn into?
What do you mean?
Adults.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right?
Yeah.
So kids turn to adults.
Yeah.
And so if now you're an adult.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's a large part, Annika, besides how I feel about my abilities, confidence, understanding, strategic thinking, vision. That's why I ran for mayor and state rep, because real people need someone that they can see and know is just like them, pursuing and or doing jobs that impact everybody. And once they see that, although they may not be engaged in the moment, you start getting some engagement. They may start to believe a little more. You might get them to a community picnic. And you might get them on a working group. Mm-hmm. Right? Now they're voting.
Have you seen any shifts in engagement from in the last 5-6 years, community engagement?
I would say so. Maybe a little bit. I think um, my state rep campaign, for example, I think it was three of us. I wasn't backed by any kind of big money, unlike my other two opponents. I came in second by 23 votes. I think that has a lot to do with engagement in people. But since then, Annika, I mean, we have a different city council and mayor at this point. Um, I think one thing that my campaigns perhaps did, and I think you told me this, and Amy told me this immediately after my mayoral campaign, was began a shift of belief and understanding within most people in the city of Rock Island, or and even when I did state rep, I could see the same thing going to Moline, East Moline, and Silvis, because I talked to real people, and that's we had students from every high school driving their grandparents or their aunt uncles who never voted to vote, and then I would see these same people at a game or at Walmart, and they're telling me, "Oh yeah, my nephew took me to vote for you. I'm still watching you," like, and so.
And having to do all that without a little machine behind you, you know, you would think the Democratic Party would show up to the Thurgood Brooks party, but I mean, you've had to do a lot of that stuff without these institutions that provide kind of automatic support. You've had to do a lot of that by yourself. You know, if you
Not by myself.
well, because we live in a country where, you know, we desperately need like campaign finance reform and people to address what goes on in like the two-party system, and you can be pretty much a Democrat or a Republican. You know, it's very hard to run as an independent, and if you don't have those machines behind you with all of the built-in support, that's really hard. And I've always been so disappointed that you know, Democratic machine didn't show up for you in any of your endeavors that you've done.
And for me, one thing that I get from that is the feeling you have. Because I always think you're somebody who you believe in the ideals, truly believe in ideals.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're like 99% of people. But it's important for you to see certain things. It's important for Amelia. That's probably the best thing Amelia experienced. One of the best things for her politically up to this point in her life. You should have seen some of the emails she got from people who are supposed to be leaders. Not sent to her, sent to me. To the point I'm like, in one particular.
Can you talk about it, or is it private? Do you want to?
I don't mind. So when that article was written about me, Alderman Poulos, I think he might have spoke about it, or will speak to you about it. Maybe I'm.
There might be a conversation.
Yeah.
If you guys are both open to it.
Yeah, and Mark and I are really in really good standing. I respect Mark. I think Mark does the best he can with the information he gathers and makes the best decision that he believes to be best. But the incident I'm talking about, to which Mark and I have spoken since then, the person who wrote the article lied, just flat out lied in the article. Not the first time she did this to me. She put an article out lying about our campaign finances, my mayoral campaign. When we passed the police commission after my mayoral campaign, didn't hear a word from her. 2 months later, And the officer who I believe shot Deshaun, I think, when I was running for mayor, was getting an award of some sort internally. Guess who calls me for a story? Why are you calling me? This is not even a story. Congratulations, good for him.
Yeah.
But what are you trying to incite here?
Yeah.
So I don't have a story for you. Fast forward to this article she writes about me, stating that I put my hands on people, that I was threatening people, all in the presence of police officers.
Yeah.
In a room smaller than this. But the article goes out, and we respond to her. She tells me that, hey, Thurgood, anytime you're on the phone with a journalist, you're being interviewed. I say, is this an interview right now? No. So what's the difference? But my point here is, we're talking about Amelia. Some of the correspondence we had with her, crazy.
Wow.
So although that was an experience for me, that she said, wow. But wow is good for me, because I think it's important for people to understand what's really going on, right? And as far as establishment,
do you remember that when that all happened, we sat down together and watched that videotape? You got the tape of it so that you could prove that none of it happened. None of that happened. And then we had talked about, did you want to release the tape and put out a statement about it? And I don't know, but at the time I think you were so hurt, or maybe you weren't hurt. I don't know, I'm assuming.
No, I was hurt.
You were kind of like,
but I was hurt when I was shocked.
What's the point? It's just going to make it a bigger thing. Yeah. Let's just let it go.
Some of that, I could not fight them and run a campaign, especially with the apparatus we had. But also, I knew people were watching, and I don't want to keep the main thing.
Yeah.
The main thing for me was being a state rep for my community, Rock Island, Moline, East Moline, Silvis. That was the main thing. And I recognized what she was doing was an old tactic that I've read about. I've read it before. So although it did hurt me, it actually pissed me off in a lot of ways.
You're trying to reach so many people. And in this, we have such a small news footprint in the Quad Cities. There are so few places where you can go to learn about someone. And so, one story that says that you're basically beating people up in a public space. I mean, that you're...
That's that same weekend though, Annika.
There's an impact there.
Oh, definitely.
Because you've got people in a region, and that might be the only thing they know about you, and you only lose by 23 votes.
So look, so here's some irony. First, that weekend, I'm out knocking on doors, and the first door I knock on in Moline, this older white lady comes outside. It's cold, snow on the ground. And she's like, oh, you're that Thurgood guy. I'm like, yes, ma'am. So I saw the article, and my heart just sinks. I'm like, but I'm prepared. I'm about to. She's like, nope. I seen that before. They're doing it again. Keep on. You got my support. Keep on doing what you're doing. And so for me in that moment, I recognize that some folks may not see it that way, but I was like, I don't have time to fight it, because the people who want to see me that way are going to see me that way. I'm not the first person who something like this has been done in Rock Island or in the world, in the country, right? And it's my opportunity to practice what I preach to Amelia. Opportunity to practice what I preach to the kids and to Annika and to Amy and everybody else I work with who are upset because they know. You were ready to fight. You were like, I've seen you were upset, right?
Well, I was getting heart palpitations,
And so But the opportunity for me was different in where we need to go. And so the irony, though, is this. Amelia and Ethan, both. But Amelia kept the folks who had something to say about that away from. I had no knowledge of that throughout the campaign. She did such a great job. She did such a great job because she wanted me to keep the main thing, because I was teaching her that.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until after the election, I think, that when her and I went and talked and kind of debriefed, she was like, yeah, Thurgood, we were getting texts about asked about the article and things of that sort, but we kept it from you. And so that's the irony of it. So yeah, I'm sure it had, especially 23 votes. Yeah. But what if I would announce a month earlier? What if I'd announced 2 months earlier? Do I get 20? So
yeah,
that's where I think opportunity lies to learn and get better.
Yeah. I just hear from you, again, resilience and life isn't fair, but what's new?
Yeah.
You just keep going and you ground yourself in who you are and you put one foot in front of the other. And, maybe because of my privilege in my life, when something isn't fair, I'm more like, that is not fair. And I'm going to, So, I guess learning that, some of the most unfair treatment hasn't happened to me. Yeah. So when I see it to someone close to me, it's like I have a low tolerance for it. And that probably makes me kind of wimpy, actually.
No, it doesn't. It balances everything out.
Yeah.
It really, really does. And it doesn't make you look wimpy.
I'm a little wimpy. It's okay.
It gives opportunity for people who are leaders to respond how leaders should.
Yeah.
Instead of emotionally, whatever that is, wimpy, upset, whatever it is, right? And so even I think about the establishment, things of that sort, and the experiences we had with all that, or did not have, or however you want to say it. So the tension that is there, I guess you can say. I recognize that tension. I don't take it personal, although some people may think I do. I recognize, I guess, how it always has been. There's the federal government, there's tension between the Republican Party, within the Republican Party, within the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. There's two different fractions within both parties, right? And there's tension between those as far as where the party should go, right? And so why wouldn't that be the same thing here in Little Rock Island County, right? Especially in a place where, especially politically, has been one way, mm-hmm. regardless of party. 2025. Never been a black sheriff mm-hmm. in the county. I guess maybe we had Bustos, so who was he's a person of color, mm-hmm. right? Never had a person of color as county clerk. Mm-hmm. Never had a person of color as state rep, mm-hmm. state senator, congressperson out of this area. You follow on getting that.
Yeah.
And that's even with the establishment party stating their belief in diversity, leadership, all these things that help them regularly get elected. Mm-hmm. Right? But to actually do it,
well, and I would say also, though,
thing.
You're not a person who could probably be controlled. So maybe if you were a moldable or controllable candidate, it would have gone. But you had your own ideas. You have your own, because not all of your even the police commission. I think people expected you to come out with this defund the police thing, no. which was not at all what you were about.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but you also weren't quite lockstep in line with maybe what most liberals were talking about at that time. Like you maybe have always been a little bit independent, maybe mostly had Democrat linked ideas, but you weren't maybe willing to abandon your own messaging or whatever felt right to you, or and it's not really equity and inclusion and all that stuff if you have to be a puppet for someone either.
Oh.
You know, that term means that you get to show up fully as yourself, and that must have felt too risky for them. I don't know.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's risky because you may not just go along with the get along, right? And I'm not accusing all of them of doing that, or I'm not accusing anybody who. But my point is, to your point, I told somebody, I won't use the exact words, I'm not that person. I'm not that one person that will do whatever you say so I can obtain.
Yeah.
Because I don't plan on moving from where I live. And I want to be able to walk outside of my house and see the kids who go to Thurgood Marshall or I coach at the high school and know that I am being real to what I believe. Right? And so I'm not going to endorse X person over here just because she's our congressperson. No.
Yeah. I mean, we even see this at the federal level. Like, there's all this, like, block mentality. You know, this is also, like, a very random thought that just popped into my head. But during the Me Too movement, people wondered, like, why can't women just say no? You know, why can't women just, like, resist? You know, you don't want something to happen, just tell the person. And women were trying to talk about this experience of, like, well, when someone has a lot of power and influence and it makes it really hard to, like, be clear. And, you know, and I think we need to do the job of holding people accountable and helping, you know, young women have their voices and articulate their boundaries and all that stuff. But I just thought about this big, beautiful bill and all these Republicans who cannot say no.
Yeah.
Because of the power of this one person to say, if you don't do what I want you to do, you will no longer have power. I will strip you of the opportunity. I will take away your future that you want for yourself. So you better vote with me. And to watch all of these elected officials who might know that their decisions are not in their constituents' best interest, maybe not even in their own best. There was something in that was like related to the Me Too movement. Like, yeah, that's what it feels like for women sometimes who are,
good way to put it.
You know, like, this person could ruin me. I don't have a voice. And you're watching it happen with all these, like, grown-ups in positions of power, kind of afraid of that even bigger level of power. Yeah, and I think what you're saying is that you kind of were like, I'm going to go with my own conscience. I'm going to, but that maybe for the machinery makes you a less attractive candidate. For the machinery, not for the people.
Because in some ways I'm unpredictable, right? But I'm predictable to the people because I'm amongst them. And being amongst the people isn't only at party functions.
Yeah. Actually, it probably takes you away from the people. You know, it's like the higher in circles of power you get, the more removed you are quickly.
Yeah.
From
But because you may not attend party functions but want to obtain leadership within a party, well, let me say it's different. Because you may not attend party functions and you seek opportunities of public service as a member of the party because of what you believe in, that can be problematic. And you can be seen as somebody who, well, where are you? I'm among people, and that's where
right.
My success has lied on, because being around real people in real time, in different formats, and being able to hear them out, that's where I'm able to stick to my conscience.
Yeah.
And say, well, defund, nah. Even though some folks who I may be speaking on their behalf were maybe yelling out defund the police.
Mm-hmm.
I can sit there with my conviction and say no, because I like, if I look from my perspective, my vantage point, looking at the reality where we are, not this idealistic, looking where we really are, maybe we can get here.
Mm-hmm.
And so some may say that's some of an incrementalist thought, right? But if you really think about it, our being is incremental. We're here for a very, very like small snapshot of the whole world.
Yeah.
If I'm really arrogant enough to think I'm going to fix the problem before I expire, I have a bigger problem.
Yeah.
I'm here to address and move the needle in certain spaces where I can, how much I can. That's my job.
Well, and in collaboration with other people.
Yes.
Because if one person is like, I will take charge and change all of this for everyone, then you have a dictator, you have an autocrat,
not only that, but these problems were here before we got here. They're going to exist after. But did you affect change in you have children? Mm-hmm. I don't have any yet, but I'd imagine, Annika, the love you have for your kids means you're going to pour all you can into them. You are going to push them in ways that you know they can be pushed, right? You want the absolute best for them, correct?
Yes.
And you want them to be the best version of themselves, ultimately. You may recognize the best version of themselves may come when you're gone.
Yeah.
So is that a reason for you to stop? Because you won't be able to see the best version of them? Or do you continue to do what you can so they can have a best version of themselves? Even if that means you're not going to be here for it.
Yeah.
So it's no different as far as our being here on the world. I may not see the impacts of what I involve myself in. The kids I coach even, do they have to come back and tell me how great they're doing for them to be doing great? They have to come find me and tell me that I impact their life in this small way? No, go be great.
Mm-hmm. And there is such a big impact there. I mean, I've worked around kids. I bet you do run into kids who were like, you helped shape me. And I think what I also hear you saying is that way of living your life, of being more connected, is more impactful than being at a soiree where you're raising money for the party. You know, all the money stuff that has to happen and all the fundraising. It's like, when you die, are you going to be like, wow, I wish I would have attended another Democratic potluck or fundraiser? No, you're going to remember the way those kids looked at you. You're going to remember the tables you sat around.
How their parents will text me and say, oh my God, thank you for this.
Yeah.
Or that's the stuff that not only I remember, but that's what I lean on when I run my campaigns. Because I don't ignore I am a Democrat. As far as I vote Democrat, you're absolutely right in the sense of I have independent thoughts. I think most of us do, but a lot of us don't really say it, right? But I lean and vote Democrat, right? So I'm not here to say I don't attend or believe. Yeah, but I also recognize that because I am open in the sense of not simply saying, oh, this is what we're doing, because whatever, I recognize that can create tension, right? But people, I think that's why I was attractive to you in the sense of you wanted to help my campaign and see me grow and work with me. And I'd imagine other folks had that same experience. And so I think the party respects that from me, at least, right? And I look forward as an individual, as I grow, to help bring some of that flavor here in Rock Island County. Because I think my responsibility as a leader is partly why I did not run for mayor again, because I could not sit with myself recognizing that I made somebody in Moline and Silvis believe in me.
Yeah.
They left their couch, bed, house, work, job, wherever, to go and vote. Or they did it in the comfort of home and sent it in. They checked my name. So that conviction, some of that conviction led me to say, well, I believe I can win mayor if I were to run. Mm-hmm. But do you run because you know you're going to win? I believe I could have the capacity, but
well, Ashley said you were his first call. If you would have run, he wouldn't have run.
We talked. Him and I talked.
But the borders of your kind of conviction have expanded.
Well, I lost by 23 votes.
Yeah.
And all my votes didn't come from Rock Islanders.
Yeah.
Right? That tells me people believe in what we're doing, regardless of who's welcoming me into what. Because the same people, that was a primary. It wasn't a general election. That was a primary.
You know, our mutual friend Jess Youngblood, she was just telling me that, Kirkpatrick, but for some reason she was just reciting to me something from Maya Angelou where God put a rainbow in your cloud. Mm. And it's kind of like, I feel like this work you're doing in the West End, I mean, you're getting like a master's degree in how to do the shit. Like people are always like, every campaign you listen to, it's like, well, we need economic development. We need community development. But then it kind of trails off because it's really hard to point to an example of that or to, well, how do you do that? Well, we're going to find a company to come here. No. We're going to wait for a big company to come here and save us all. And so I feel like this work you're doing right now, like you are doing it. I mean, I'm sure you can't talk about everything you're doing, but you are changing the shape of arguably the hardest part of Rock Island to change. Mm-hmm. And we are the city in this region that might have some of the biggest challenges with our median income. And, so if you can affect change there and are modeling all these ways to do that, it's like creating change in places that have resources isn't actually that hard,
I love how you said that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I'm glad you said that because that also went into my thinking and not running for mayor. Was the first time around, I worked at the King Center. Let's say it differently. It wasn't the first time around. When I ran for mayor, I worked at the King Center still, but I was a family advocate. And you cannot be an employee for the city and be the mayor, right? So I was fully aware that had I won, I would have to find another job. But I was okay with that. Mm-hmm. I was okay with that. I love the King Center. I love the families. I love that work, but I was okay with giving up that work and have a different job so I can do the work as mayor as well. I wasn't okay with being done with the Western Revitalization Project.
Yeah.
Could I impact it as mayor? Sure. But that's not being the mayor. That's not the job. The mayor, the job of a mayor to do the Western Revitalization job. Right? Now, some may say, well, Thurgood, you just said you had a responsibility to Moline and East Moline. Yes. Mm-hmm. But to your point, I am standing on my responsibility to them by doing the work in the West End because I'm honing the skills that it's going to take to represent them the proper way when I do.
So I hear you saying that your journey for running for things is not over.
Oh, no.
Okay.
It has to make sense. It's never going to be about me. And the next opportunity I take to run, will be because I believe that opportunity at that time will be important, for one, but also that I can impact in a way and do the job in a way that nobody else can in that time frame. And part of that will be how I can generate more people to be involved. Because that's what I'll be able to do even in my quote-unquote failures through the campaigns. The success has lied in bringing people and generating a buzz for them to feel and believe that they can do. And so the next opportunity I have will be touching on that.
Part of this endeavor is like the individual conversations, the website with like the articles, but also doing some in-person, more community stuff. Would you ever like walk around with me? I got these little microphones that you can like clip on your. Vic would be able to tell us how to do all of this.
Yeah, we've done it 1,000 times. Shout out to Vic.
Yes, always a shout out to Vic. But would you ever be willing to, go around and like ask people, like interview people about what makes you more likely to be engaged in community and what makes you less likely? Because I think people probably prefer to talk to you. I'm getting old. I'm just an old white lady now.
I looked forward to coming to talk to you personally.
Yeah, but I'm just old and I'm kind of nerdy and, but just trying
I'm
to
getting old
capture.
too. My birthday was.
I know. I saw you had a birthday.
Yeah, sorry.
But just kind of engaging people at a farmer's market or at an event, having a little tent or something. Maybe you could do like a guest spot with me where you're just trying to engage people around like, did you vote? Have you voted locally? Do you vote nationally? Do you vote locally? Why don't you vote locally? Because I think one way to address mental health is having agency at the local level.
Yes.
Having agency in your school, in your community. We actually can impact that. People do have tremendous amounts of power just by being their one person and their one vote. So just kind of going out, I'm just so curious, like, if we were to walk around the city, like, did you vote? Why didn't you vote? What would make you more likely? Would you ever want to do that with me?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I would do that with you in a heartbeat. And also, that's where the real power is what we do locally.
Yeah.
And how we, at the county level especially, in the city, oh my goodness. If we knew we how we vote for president would look so different compared to other elections, right? And so I would do that in a heartbeat with you.
Okay, let's do it sometime when it's not super hot out. We'll find a couple different events and, because I think a part of this endeavor is just getting people to be engaged. And really, like, you look at those kids, looking at the city of Rock Island, holding up a mirror to it, like, it is beautiful here. Mm-hmm. There is value here. There are tons of people with tons of talents, and that's a lot of what we talked about in your campaign when we would sit and think, how do you tap into the resources that are already here, the beauty and potential and, all the stuff, and make the growth accessible to everyone, not just a few. So yeah, I think that part of it is trying to attract people to kind of talk to each other and generate power. Exactly what you're doing in the West End, but
you got to build community, right? And relationships, communication. I mean, that's how you're able to have community and do what you're getting at, right? And however we can do that, I'm always looking forward and excited to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can get that done.
That would be fun. I've literally been talking to you for 2 hours. Do you need to go anywhere?
I'm here with you. I haven't noticed 2 hours.
Okay.
So until you kick me out, I guess we'll be here.
Yeah.
But truly though, Annika, I think about like I said, my election, and I think about like to your point, how we're treated, and I believe it's opportunity, and I think even how I've handled it in some ways, I kind of upset myself, because I'm human, but I'm tasked with being a leader. And so that requires me to act as such. And so just as I recognized my mayoral campaign, we wouldn't get endorsements from this place or that place, didn't stop me and Vic with the mic on my chest and him rolling with the camera from walking in said place or places. You follow me?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm getting at when I talk about me recognizing, me accepting, more or less, what I need to do in the face of tension with establishment to obtain and do for real people, right? And so we'll get better. I'm getting better, and I'm excited about what's next and what's to come. And I firmly believe the West End work that we're doing, like I was saying earlier, I firmly believe that is going to help prepare me. It's preparing me, but also people are watching. Mm-hmm. I'm aware people are watching, and the success that we have there, I think, will help people help show people that although I was unexperienced this time around, whenever it was, maybe he has a certain skill set, and that skill set is not Thurgood based.
Yeah,
it's working with people. Like, that's the strength of mine. The strength of mine is, I really believe, is finding the strengths of other people, and maximizing those in ways that they can use for the greater good of everybody, right? And that's what I try my best to do, is remove myself as much as I can, let others shine within their strengths, and then try to insert myself to help in areas where we need to get the job done, right? So that's what I've always done. Yeah. That's what I've always done, and that's what I try to do.
It's beautiful, and you're good at it. You're also kind of like the Terminator. Did you ever watch that movie when you were a kid? Where he's just like, you just keep getting up. Like, you just keep getting up. You'll be back. You're doing the work.
I'll be back.
Yeah, you're not changing course. You just, stay with it. So, or maybe I'm thinking of RoboCop. I can't remember. But the one where, like, the guy gets knocked down. No, it's Terminator.
Yeah,
he just gets up and keeps going. Yeah.
But like I said before, that's what I read as a kid. That's what I seen. That's what I watched. That's who my people are, mm-hmm. Right? My dad was an art person. Besides, I wasn't privy to everything, of course, but I seen certain things. I read the paper every day as a kid.
Wow.
So you don't think I see my dad in the paper sometimes and things I'm like, You don't think my dad has some articles in the paper that weren't like, what?
Yeah.
So when I experience it, I'm kind of more prepared. I seen it. Tension within the party. You think my dad had tension within the party?
Yeah.
Before my dad was an art person, the establishment would tell the art person what to do. You don't think they didn't want my dad to be an art person?
Yeah.
You don't think they were upset? You don't think that probably had a reason? You follow I'm getting there?
Yeah.
So I can't be that arrogant or self-serving to think that I'm above certain things, right? But because I know better, my job is to do better.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's what I mean by it. I'm kind of upset with myself in some ways. And that's probably, I'm upset for being imperfect.
But how old were you when I met you?
Oh, geez. I couldn't hear your age in us.
Like 2019, 2020.
2020, I was, 93. I was 27.
Yeah.
Wow. I was 27, a baby. 27.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm truly excited because, wow, that was 5 years ago, but like Amelia, for example, Amelia is going to be a junior in college now. A lot of those kids who were in, I help them.
And Amelia was like a Rock Island High School.
Rock Ridge.
Oh, Rock Ridge.
Which speaks to that's another point why I didn't run. Rock Ridge wasn't even in our district that I was running for.
Yeah. Yeah, and she was a Rock Ridge student who was basically helping you manage everything because, and probably learned so much. I mean, she probably got like a master's degree.
Can I tell my Amelia story a little bit?
Yes, yeah.
And she laughs when I tell her story all the time. But Amelia, this is right before you like told me officially, like, Thurgood, I can't help you, right?
Yeah.
I think you were trying to fight it.
Well, I was like, out of nowhere, I started having like a heart issue. My heart rate would go from 70 to like 160.
Was that before I asked you?
It was like right around that time. Okay. I was just like totally overwhelmed, and then I found out I had just like long-standing untreated anemia, which actually like changed the shape of my heart. I'm all fine now.
Yeah.
But I was really struggling then. I could not help myself or anyone else.
Yeah. But I remember even you were like, I was like Amelia or not Amelia, Annika, just don't worry about me.
Yeah.
Right. But so Amelia, when I announced, it was in January, she reached out via the website. It was like, hey, I would love to, I'm Amelia, I'm 16-year-old from Rock Ridge, blah, 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 blah. I love Thurgood and what he stands for. I would love to volunteer if I could. So I think it was Jessica. You love Jessica here. Shout out to Jessica. She sent me the email. She sent me the correspondence. And I was like, give me your number. So I called Amelia. She's working at Weiss. And so I'm laying on my couch. I had just woke up from a nap, actually, which I really take. And I seen Jessica send me the numbers. I call Amelia. I'm like, hey, it's Thurgood. She hangs up. So I called her back. I'm like, hello, this Amelia. I'm like, it's Thurgood. She's like, are you serious? Yeah. Oh, it was so cute because she's like, she couldn't believe it.
Uh-huh.
And so I was like, hey, I got your email. My team sent it to me. Let's have a Zoom next week. She couldn't believe that either. So we Zoomed the following week. Whole time in my head, I'm already knowing, like, I'm going to ask her to be part of my team in some capacity because my dad always told me, Thurgood, when people say or ask they want to help, allow them to.
Yeah.
And then allow them to help how they can. Don't judge them how it is. Right? And so that's what I did with Amelia. So we talked for a little bit, like half hour or so. And in the talk, I'm like, hey, you want to be on my campaign team? She couldn't believe that either. She's like, oh. So she joins in, and by the time the primary election in June, she was my campaign manager.
Wow.
Amelia, as a 16-year-old girl, and went to Rock Ridge High School, was essentially my campaign manager for my state rep campaign, which we lost by 23 votes.
Wow. She
was handling everything. And that's where I mentioned before, the foundation you all set, my mayoral campaign, allowed her to do so. And the communication she had with you early, all that allowed her to move from starting here. And then as Jessica even was like, yeah, let Amelia do it. And Amelia, let it. And by the time it was over, as Jessica would tell you, Amelia was doing it. And so that's a perfect example of allowing somebody to help and then them showing you where the help lies.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, Amelia always says, when I tell that story, she's like, she thought I was going to have her licking envelopes. And I'm like, no, you're going to, if you want to do this, you're going to see.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not going to put too much on you, but she's seen the nasty emails.
Yeah.
She's seen some things that.
I wonder if people even knew, like, do you know you're corresponding with a 16-year-old? Like, maybe watch your tone.
And then even when we say that, they didn't care sometimes. But
yeah.
But she's seen certain things that did not strip her of her idealism.
What did her parents think?
Oh, her mom, as far as think about the correspondence or her experience?
No, her experience, just getting invited into this world and then.
Very appreciative.
Mm-hmm.
I see her mom often in the community, and you know, she runs up to me. We talk. I love her mom. Her dad was appreciative. I went to her graduation when she graduated high school out in Rock Ridge.
Is she studying political science or?
She is a little bit, but Amelia's gonna be a lawyer.
Oh.
So she is at Rhodes College in Memphis, and she's gonna be everything I could only dream of and more, and whatever she wants to be at least. And so her mom has expressed to me that you know, her experience with, you know, me in the campaign, how valuable it is to, you know, for Amelia and all that, and I'm sure Amelia has too. But I'm just as fortunate, and you know, I love Amelia. I love all of them. All of them. Amelia, Alicia, like Mari, all of them.
But it sounds like, you know, you didn't have a preconceived notion about who, you know, kind of like, oh, I need this veteran campaign person, or I need the person with this thing on their resume. You weren't necessarily doing it that way.
No.
You were like, let me look to the community that naturally pops up around me and take advantage of, not take advantage, but, you know, utilize the strengths and what is there. It doesn't have to be an outside thing. It doesn't have to be, and like that I think is how you revitalize a community.
Yeah, because even I said to you before, like, I can't make a logo, for example. The stuff Amy and Moses and Kira and Vic were doing to come up with colors, blue is blue to me. Like, but they found a specific type of blue, specific type of red, white. I couldn't do that. That's not. But I have a certain interest, experience, understanding of politics.
Yeah.
So I can fit in to where your strengths are. Tamara's like you and Tamara are both wonderful writers. That statement y'all put together, that y'all put together after the shooting, that I just essentially was able to proofread, tell my thoughts to you, and y'all beautiful. I got I get people to this day tell me about that statement. So I couldn't do that alone.
Yeah. You are definitely a very collaborative person. You spend a lot of time listening as well as talking. I always appreciated that. Sometimes you would just be quiet and we'd all be talking. You'd be like, you know, that's your nature. And I think it probably serves you really well in the work that you do.
And because I recognize my strengths, like I said, especially, and so running a camp, I had little fear having lack of political experience directly involved, because I felt like I had a lot of political experience in some ways. And I knew the experience that I had would be enhanced by the traits and skill sets of folks that were helping me. That's how we were able to tell our story and get across the city into the county, because of you all. Yeah. Honestly, because of you all. So,
well, and it's what Rock Island needs. Like this, maybe part of this is just like, what do people want to see here? What types of services or entertainment, and then how do you look to the community that's already here to kind of do a survey of like, who has that skill, who has that talent, but is maybe missing a little bit of the capital to get it going? And how do we also find the people in the community with capital who can match more seamlessly to the people with the talent, because it's there, it's all around us. It's not coming from outside, it's here. But, you know, because there's just like sectioning off of resources or opportunity, or people just get together in different circles. It's like, oh, well, I was talking to this person, and if you're not, what did we used to say? If you're
not in the know, you don't. If you're not in the know,
yeah, you don't know if you're not in the know.
Yes,
or
yes.
But something like that, like you know, matching people to talent and identifying gaps in the community, and like who could fill that gap. Maybe there is a little budding, you know, contracting like house building person who just is like, well, I like doing this, but I can't take it to that next scale. But maybe the city or the community is like, we need more people who can build that are from Rock Island. And how do we like help develop that? You're smiling as though you know who this person is.
No, I guess I'm smiling because there's persons and people that can do those different things, but there's ordinances and from the local and state level, from some even that there's things that prevent that some ways.
Well, tell me about them. We can write about them. We can, you know, and I think that's like the thing I took away from being involved in your campaign is like, I don't know if I really like politics that much. It's very hard. There is a lot of conflict. You have people upset with you. We're probably similar. I love this other thing that I'm doing now, which is like, how can you have influence or help people generate power by just highlighting stories, highlighting information, you know, storytelling, so that if there is an ordinance, and normally what happens is it's like 7 people are paying attention to it. How do we make sure more people are paying attention to it to remove barriers or put up, you know, I don't know.
We definitely can. Those things transcend party.
100%.
And
that's a good thing, right?
well, let me be clear. I guess things that are intended to do good, or things that are from certain parties, some may say only their policies affect us negatively compared to the party I align myself with.
Are you talking kind of about this like abundance mindset book? I don't know if you've read that yet, but it kind of talks about how in the Democratic Party, there's so many regulations and so many barriers and so much bureaucracy, and that everything has to move so slow. And maybe there's like so much regulation that you can't get stuff done.
Yes.
That it almost becomes, if you're under-resourced, your own party almost becomes an impediment to entrepreneurship and development. And because we've just created like such a mess of slowing things down. And so entrepreneurs are going to Texas, or they're going to, you know, and the big blue states are really having trouble being responsive enough and fast enough.
Old money, new money.
Yeah.
I always could say it, the Great Gatsby. In the Great Gatsby, you had the East Egg, West Egg. I forget which one was considered old, which one was considered new. So I'll just keep it at old money, new money. One part of the town is where old money stayed. Another part of town where new money stayed. For the most part. Ultimately, what I gather from that scenario within the book, are you familiar with what I'm getting at?
No, because it's been so long. I think I read that when I was in school, but I can't even remember.
I watched the movie like a year ago because I always use an analogy. Anyway, my point is, old money's problem with new money overall was the threat of now old money losing something because new money's coming in to threaten what they always have had.
Yeah.
You follow me?
Yeah.
It's no different here. Rock Island and Rock Island County, Quad Cities. I'll keep it Rock Island County though, is a perfect example of that. Mm-hmm. That's why I say it transcends party. Because there are regulations that if you were to broadly question, merely question, oh, you're anti-union. Mm-hmm. Well, no, I'm not anti-union. Both my grandparents raised a family because they were union members. Mm-hmm. Unions helped push forward initiatives that I enjoy today. Unions create safety that so no. And those are real people who do real jobs.
Yeah.
Just like me. But to your point, there are certain regulations that an idea of safety may hinder someone who may own 3 properties from maybe doing the roofing.
Mm-hmm.
Who gets that bid though?
Yeah.
Who can do the roofing though now?
Yeah.
Although they can do it, but safety.
Yeah. So are you talking about like at the courthouse, somebody had to do the roof, but it has to be this kind of big, big entity, older established business, and it becomes much harder for a startup business to do it because of safety. But there's no like evidence that you're less safe or, yeah, we'll have to get more into that because I'm curious about that. Because I think also like this big, beautiful bill has passed and it's going to affect people who are already living in poverty. And so, I've noticed online a lot of people like me are really upset about it. How can we take more benefits and resources away from people who are living in poverty? But meanwhile, I will be getting a tax break. Like that bill financially will advantage me. And so I'm going to see if I could get like a group of people together who are in theory like, this is terrible. This, you go on the internet and you're like, everybody's posting on their social media about how this bill is going to affect real people, but might also be taking a tax cut from that and just putting that in their pocket. And I would like to get a group of people who really feel strongly that we need a better redistribution of wealth to take those funds and like do some like angel investing or something. Like, let's get a fund going to fund entrepreneurs, which I wish the city did more of, but they don't. That's not how they do their economic development. But what is probably more powerful is like if there is a budding construction company, but what they're missing is like, oh, you got to file this paperwork and the fee for it's $1,500 and we need these 5 pieces of equipment, and that you could have entrepreneurs. What you need when you start a business as a small business owner is capital. You need capital, and you might not even need crazy amounts of it. But I would invite anyone who lives in the Quad Cities who is a liberal white woman like me, who's like, I'm really disappointed by this bill, but I'm just going to secretly put all my tax break money in my pocket and just complain about it on the internet. Let's come up with a fund and help people, do their own thing so they can build their own wealth. And I don't know.
You're doing what I talked about earlier.
What?
What I try to tell the kids and tell the Thurgood Marshall kids, things that one could say we're a victim of the bill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but how can we make this something that is a victor? And that's what you're talking to. Can I clear something up real quick?
Can you what?
Clear something up? The statement I said about roofing.
Yeah.
You gave an example of City Hall.
Yeah, or the court, or any.
I want to be clear. I'm not saying that that's wrong, what I said. But the example I was getting at is I had people come to talk to me who may own, let's say they own 3 properties. Although they can do certain jobs within those properties, they cannot because of certain regulations. So now they have to go and seek out a bid for somebody to come and do said job at one of their properties because of the quantity that they own.
Oh, okay. See, I just have my house, so I don't know any of these rules. So basically, if you're a property manager, the rules change for you. Like, I could basically hire anyone to do my roof. But once you kind of get into the weeds there of these ordinances and how they affect people, and, I don't know about any of that. They're good.
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting at as far as some things.
Yeah.
Right? And then who's that really hurting? That's my point.
Yeah.
It's hurting the little guy. And I understand the idea of safety. Like, you don't want just anybody coming and doing a roof or water heaters or electricity. I get that. So I'm not to beat that horse, but I'm not saying certain things aren't needed and should be done and considered. And yes.
Mm-hmm.
But
you want to balance it with, you have people who want to work and want to build companies and want to do the thing. and they have to pass through these hurdles of either, maybe it's like, well, you can't do this unless you have a degree or a certain type of training, and some of that is, like you're saying, some of that might be very valid, but some of it might just be hurdles to keep the pre-existing structure in place, and it's harder to make room for like the new generations of developers. Or most of our economic development happens through Economic Growth Corps over the last 20-30 years, and I don't know everything about that, but it's like, why is it just that one place and just their contracting company? And so all that development and those dollars through TIFs and, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm saying, wouldn't it be super cool if the property management, the contracting companies, if that was like spread out, or is through that process you're helping develop new businesses in your community while these dollars are coming in?
America was maybe competition was intended to be good for America.
Yeah.
However, competition is not good for capitalists.
Well, yeah, capitalism is built on pure capitalism would be less regulation and more people just mixing it up and doing things. And so we have this system where we've put a lot of regulation on our capitalism and a lot of incentives and a lot of, carrots and sticks. We kind of mess with our capitalist system. So it's kind of distorted or something. So in theory, competition should be great, but we've kind of done things where only certain people can really compete. Yeah. Well,
and it's always been that way too in some ways.
Yeah, but I think, spreading out the opportunity to compete.
Yes.
Spreading out the access and like recognizing that the federal government can have periods where it does a good job or a bad job, or the state government. But what I would love to see in Rock Island or locally is like, if you want stuff like that to happen, if you're committed to it, you don't have to wait for permission from some other entity. People here can get together and try things and do things that can be within the bounds of the law and everything different. Like, I don't have to wait for my taxes to change before I decide that I want to give up a little bit more of my money. Yeah. I don't have to wait for that.
We have a saying, so easy is hard. And so what you're speaking to is just that thought. So when 2016, we did a basketball shootout at the high school to commemorate the state championship we had in 2011. The following year, we coupled that with Chase and Randall's basketball camp. And people would ask, well, how'd you get Rocky? We were trying to get Rocky or things of that sort. Excuse me, what I'm getting at is, it's about us finding a way to do it, right? Regardless of what you cannot do, do it. Figure out how to do it, and then once you do it, you can move from there.
Yeah.
Right. And I think too oftentimes we, for whatever reason, lean on what is supposed to be hard, instead of realizing the hard part is just trying to just do it and figure it out.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the part I lean on, is doing it. Because once you actually lean on doing it, it turns really easy. People start to join you.
Yeah.
Right. Especially if it's a worthy cause. Right. And so,
it's funny you say that, because my first guest was Don Wooten, and I made this little sticker that Don Wooten is my spirit animal, and you're saying kind of the same thing as him, and he's done so much in the community, but he just did shit. He just did it. He was like, I had an idea and I did it.
Yes.
I didn't really ask for a lot of permission. I didn't check to see if I could do it. I didn't look up how did 5 other people do this. I mean, some of that's probably wise,
Well,
but he talks about these hits of inspiration and then just going with it, and how exactly what you're saying, it would get started and then it became, I think you're so right in that.
people ask me, who told you to run for mayor? What you mean, who told me?
Mhm.
Who told you to run what do you mean? I'm going to do if I want to.
But I wonder if that, because I've noticed when I've been interviewing council members, a lot of them are approached by other people to run.
Both can be true.
Yeah.
But people will approach you
Yeah.
and ask you. Some people will tell you should.
Yeah. But for you, it was more of an internal, this is in me. This is.
My mayoral campaign, surely I think it was, a lot of it was, I'm not going to sit here and tell you people came to me and say, run for mayor, Thurgood. No. Maybe a few, couple. But it was internal from the belief I had as far as my internal belief,
Yeah.
my vision for the city, right? I knew before COVID I was running for mayor.
Yeah.
But you can't tell me the resolution and things of that sort didn't speak to a conviction I had that I was right in October of 2019 that I was running for mayor.
Yeah.
And then things that happened, I meet you, I meet Annika, I meet Amy, I meet Tamara, I get a team together.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're prepared to run for mayor, to where people, state rep, more people ask me,
Yeah.
right? But my point is,
It's almost like you have this intention or vision or calling, and you just allow yourself to just go with it and to put one foot in front of the other. It's weird how things like that happen, like in Davenport, the building I'm in. When I worked at this other office 10 years ago, I always looked at that building. Like, I was always like, this would be a cool building for a therapy practice. I loved I don't know, there's something about it. Like, it's just weird to me. And then I drove by it, had a for rent sign out, went in there, was like, would you ever think about selling this? I had no way to buy it, zero way to buy this building. And they said, oh no, we'd never do that. And then but I'd still just always like, this building just fascinated me. And then they reached back out and said, we've decided to retire, we're gonna move. I went in and met with them, still knowing I had zero way to buy this building. And kind of went through the process and started looking, and I was able to get a loan from the city of Davenport that covered my down payment on the building. And it was like, but it was so weird because that building was just always in my head. Like, stuff like that just happens where you're.
it's funny how that happens.
Yeah, you set an intention, or you have a thing you're pulled toward, and you just keep moving toward it a step at a time.
And it works out.
Yeah.
Right? And it shows itself.
I don't even know what this is. I don't really know what I'm doing. But I've had this pull of, like, I think my work doing individual therapy is coming to an end. And I want to do community work. I want to be, but I've also always loved, like, storytelling. I like writing, something creative and more fun in a way. I don't know. But you just kind of keep, like, putting one foot in front of the other and really trusting that the thing that's going to unfold in front of you is going to be exactly what it should be.
That's all you can do. I mean,
Yeah.
that's life, and so that's how I try to operate. And the difference that I would say, what I was getting at as far as being told or told, is that if I ever feel like someone telling me to run for something, am I doing it for the right reason?
Yeah. Because those people can also show up in your life for a reason. Like, somebody told my husband, you should do this job he has now. And he was like, no, I've never thought about that ever. Never thought about that. And it was kind of random. And he ended up going with that. And it's like the best thing he's ever done. And he loves it so much. And he gets purpose and meaning. But it was somebody showing up in his life to say, have you ever considered this?
But that's a difference.
Yeah.
So,
like, a difference between, like, run so I can tell you what to do versus I see this for you. Something's telling
Consider
me.
it.
Consider it. Yeah.
that's the difference I'm getting at.
People have asked me about that stuff. Have you ever thought about this? But I do not have thick enough skin, Thurgood. I would cry, and I would be like, why don't they like me?
Well, I think
so
yeah, I think I'll be okay in some ways.
yeah, I think
I've been disliked before.
you have thicker skin. You know, you can tolerate, like you said, the tension, the conflict, mixing it up. You know, if we end up doing that conversation with Mark, the rupture that happens when you're engaged in your community, and it's just like a family. You know, if I told you my husband and I have never had big fights, I would be lying. But the thing that's beautiful about that is then you deepen your understanding and you have the repair on the other side, or with your children or your best friends. You know, there is rupture. It is part of life. But the juice is in the repair.
Yes.
And yeah.
Which requires you look in the mirror and then look in the mirror.
But I feel like our modern politics doesn't always give us a chance to do the repair part. And so if it's all rupture, which is a little bit of maybe what I experienced in your campaign, was like, there's just rupture and conflict, but we don't have a way to then come back and repair or meet back at the table with the opposition. Or that was hard for me. It was very hard because I really need that. Okay, now how do we, and you're good at that. And I think because you're the person, like, you got to go back maybe and have repair, but I was just like, you know.
Yeah, and contrary to, I think some people, I mean, he's passionate, he aggressive, I don't know, whatever they may say about me. There's a misconception perhaps for some folks who may be naysayers that I don't have the capacity to do just that, right? But that's where I thrive, I think. I think I thrive in chaos, amidst the chaos. I mean, you mentioned in our meeting sometimes everybody's going, and I'm just sitting there. Mm-hmm. And then something shifts, and and so you mentioned Mark. It wasn't hard for me to mend that with Mark. It took time to do so, mainly because I if it would have happened sooner, I don't think the understanding would have been there. Because I need to be ready, he need to be ready to hear what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Right? And I think people misunderstand me and my willingness to work through issues with folks for the greater good of the goal.
Yeah.
I'm really keen on keeping the main thing, right? And that's I think what Mark found out in real time, and I think that's why him and our relationship is getting better.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, there's a saying in AA it's like principles above personalities. And it reminds me of that. It's like we're here for the principles of driving our community forward. We're not going to get distracted or bogged down in the personality stuff.
No. That's football too, so maybe that's probably right there a lot of from football. I mean,
yeah,
it's a lot of guys.
Yeah.
You think we all get along?
This big personality, that big personality, but when you come together to win a game or to be a part of a team, you need to sideline your personality a little bit to.
Nobody cares about what you think or your favorite color, and I don't care. Mm-hmm. We're here to win.
Yeah,
let's do that together.
I love
That's
that.
fun.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna let you get out of here because we've been talking for 2.5 hours, and I feel bad.
It's all good, It was a.
I'm
good
the Joe Rogan
hours.
of Rock Island.
It was a good 2.5 hours, so I sincerely appreciate it, and I look forward to any other conversation you and I have individually, with Mark potentially, walking, knocking on doors, or at a pop-up somewhere. I appreciate you, and allow me to come on and kind of tell a little bit of my story, and get people to see a little bit who Thurgood is inside, and answer some questions. I know a lot of people were kind of curious why I didn't run for mayor, maybe curious what I've been involved in doing, but I'm still doing the work. I don't intend on stopping. My not running was not a throwing the white flag, as some people have, want to know. It actually is moving. It's a long game strategy, and realizing that my place here in the community is valued, is appreciated, and needed. And because I recognize that, not from myself but from people, I have a responsibility to do what is best, not only what is obtainable, if that makes sense. And so I'll keep that attitude and do what I think is best for the community and whatever venture I run for next, and do.
I'm Team Thurgood all the way. So
I appreciate that.
yeah, and we'll talk again. Hopefully, you can come back and fill us in on the West End stuff or anything you're doing, or that would be awesome.
Look forward to it.
Okay.
Look forward to it.
Well, thanks for being on the Rock Island line.
Thank you for having me, and I look forward to seeing this grow and what you and I can do next.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you.
We did it.